we only have the room for so much, and you guys are busy. And so it was a great turnout for all of you to come out. Again, my name's Mele. Some of you might know me. I ran in the previous election in Ramapo for Ramapo Town Supervisor in 2007. I garnered 11,000 votes on a shoestring and bubblegum type budget. So we showed that people power can do it. That was a really good showing. I want to recognize two people here real quick, just to point out. I was sitting over here, my friend and colleague, Bobby Romanowski, who was my colleague on the Ramapo. Bobby's my hero. Bobby ran a primary against Chris St. Lawrence of Ramapo on the Republican line. He came within 400 votes of the primary. After being thrown off the ballot by the Supreme Court, he confronted the 4 town attorneys on our tax dollar budget, and a great Herculean effort. It was a beautiful thing, and Bobby is an object lesson for all of us. Also, there's a young man in here I'd like to recognize as well. I was very good friends with his father, a Vietnam veteran, and I'm very proud of this young man. And the reason being is that he's pulling good grades in school because I have a monetary bet with him that he's been beating my butt on every time I turn around. But also, this is what it's about. It's about this young man. May I, Chris Buford, stand up a second, please? Chris, how old are you? You're 13. This young man's going to be able to vote in 5 years. In 5 years, what kind of country is he going to be voting in? Are we going to be a full-blown socialist, communist country where the freedoms that we are fighting for today are going to be gone? And by the time he gets to vote, it's going to be gone. So it's up to us. So that's the reason, one of the reasons why we're here. So I just want to do some illustrations for you real quick. Okay? No, I'm not giving you any money. This is what it's about. Okay? It's about the things that we can agree on. And you're going to see much of what you were saying and the questions that you were all saying are going to converge in our commonality. Now, dollar bill, right, represents a promissory note by the U.S. government that this is worth something. This is really just a piece of paper, but this is supposed to be worth something. This is what we get in return for our labor. Now, the American Revolution, what the American Revolution was all about was about sovereignty. When the revolutionaries stood up, and I got news for you, there are more people in this room than began the American Revolution of the 13 colonies. Okay? And so a whole revolution began with less people in this room. And look at the country we have today because of it. So small things can happen, big things can happen at a small beginning. Now, real quick, right? $1. We all work. Now, our sovereignty is what independence meant. So what independence meant was that we are no longer giving our loyalties to a sovereign, to a king over us, who owns our labor. So everything that we work, everything that the peasant or the farmer or the merchant worked for, he had to give that, the produce of his labor to the king. The king owned it, the king owned him. What the revolution was about says, no you don't. You own yourself. You are a free sovereign over your own body and over your own labor. And that was the revolution in a world of kings, where they said, no, you are the king over yourself. That was the revolution. Now, in return for our labor, we are sovereign of our labor. We sell our labor to whomever we choose to in return for compensation. Now, we have governments formed over us, and in return for governments having over us, we pay a portion of our labor called taxation to that government. Okay? Now, what's happened over the years is that 100% of our labor, okay, is represented in this dollar. Let's say out of 4 weeks out of the year what we get paid. Okay? What happens is that we give, let's say, a sliver of our labor to the government called taxation. Okay? And the rest of our free labor belongs to us. So therefore, let's say we work 2 days out of the week 2 days out of the month for the government, and the rest was ours. Then as things progressed, we began working for 25% of our labor was given to the government. That means 1 week out of our labor that we worked for the government, because 1 week of our pay went to taxation, right? Now we're finding ourselves where we're looking at, many of our paychecks are starting to look like we're paying out 50% of our labor. So 2 weeks out of the month we're working for the government, and the other 2 weeks we're trying to survive. The things that are happening now and falling upon us are happening like termites eating a house. It's biting it and eating it and cutting away by it, slice by slice, incrementally. Now we're trying to turn around and looking at that 3 weeks of our labor is for the government. And the thing is that we're paying more and getting less. We're not getting a better quality. So now this is what it's looking at. When that young man, Chris, gets to a working age, what is he going to look at? A day when he's working 1 day for himself and 29 days for the government? Or how about a time when he's working completely for the government? And then the government is going to tell him where you work, how you live, what you can have, and what we're going to provide for you. You know what countries do that? Marxist countries. We're looking at fascism and Marxism in our time, in our face. And it's this generation that has to turn that around. Now, what we've been heard is the theme that's been going on, that many of you have been saying here, and Frank and my good friends from around, is basically this, is that there's strength in numbers and there's power in common cause. There is nothing more important in our system. Nothing more important. Strength in numbers and power of common cause. And I'm going to show you again why that is important and why that is well known, because it is exemplified again on the U.S. dollar. If you look at your U.S. dollar and you see the eagle, okay, on the seal of the United States, the eagle is holding in his talon 13 arrows. Those 13 arrows, and just to cut time about it, represent a story about the Iroquois Indians that Benjamin Franklin brought up. And in it, it talked about how the 5 nations of the Iroquois were always at war with each other and always poor and destitute and not having a good time. They tried to solve it. So they went to a wise man. And the wise man gave each of the chiefs of the 5 nations an arrow. And he told them, break the arrow. And then he took 5 arrows and he bound them together and he gave each one of them the arrows and passed around. He told them, try to break it. He couldn't. He was trying to show there was strength in numbers, strength in unity. And this was the idea that permeated in the Congress and why the 13 colonies were put together, and that was Benjamin Franklin's debate forum. So that still applies to us today. Well, all of these different groups with a common cause and their strength in numbers. And maybe if we're separate, they might be strong, there might be some influence, but imagine the influence and strength that we have together. So if we can pull together all of these different groups, we might have differences of opinion, but there's certain things that we can't agree upon. So what we have to look for is common cause. Now there's many different things politically and socially and such that we will never agree on. And if we start a debate on it, we will be here till the cows come home. So we have to start thinking in your minds now, and that kind of concluded at this moment, but think in your minds now, imagine if there were 3 things that we can all agree on. And if we had a candidate who embodied that philosophy, and that candidate believed those 3 things and would work towards those 3 things, then would you vote for him, regardless of whatever political persuasion or party he may be in? Would you vote for him if he believed what you believe and had those 3 things, right? We would, because that's what we want to do. Now, take this dollar around here. Bobby's here. Now, I'm just going to show you something real quick.